one of the things that I just hit me very much is like, the value of silence actually and the value of listening. Uh, the vast, I just went for a long walk in the countryside here with another guy who lives close by and was talking about his relationship with his dad. And he just, he was just like, if only I had a dad who could listen to me and just like, take in what I'm saying and not always have opinions and trying to be teaching me and trying to force his way. And, when I heard your explanation right now, actually, I was just thinking like, it sounds like you just really took a step back and thought about it and thought about things actually from my perspective as well. And there was a respect for the work that I've been doing so far and a patience to allow things to work out or something like that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So the fact that you'd already built an organization, you'd already built a communication with men, and could I be a part of that was more the consideration than how would I do it.
Welcome, Dad, to our second conversation, father and son. Happy to have you here again. And in our first conversation, we spoke about quite a few things. But the thing that really kind of like got my interest a lot is that you told me that when I first asked you to join Manifesto Core to support this work that we're doing with men's groups, that you actually felt quite conflicted about it. And you pointed out, I think, some really relevant concerns about what we're doing in Manifesto. Something that I've been wrestling with since then, one could say. But what I've been thinking about is, why didn't you tell me back then? And also, this is relevant as far as like father-son communication dynamics is concerned. Why is it that you never told me back then about this kind of like conundrum or this issue that you understood?
Well, I suppose it's twofold. One is Manifesto kind of started way back, and you were in a different space at the time. And this was something that had already developed. It was already rolling. It was already in motion. And you asked me if I'd join. So I saw that as a privilege that you'd actually invited me to come into this thing. But nevertheless, I had this conflicting thoughts about, which way is this thing going to go? And how can I be a part of something where maybe my focus was in a different direction?
Yeah.
So
maybe we should recap, like what was the difference again, Dad? Just to recap if people haven't seen the first video.
Well, this thought that man has this inbuilt capacity to kind of fix himself fully. And me as a Christian preacher, I'm always telling men that they can't fix themselves completely. They need a savior. So there was a kind of thing for me now to say, okay, I'm going to be helping men to fix themselves and not particularly with the preacher aspect to it. So that was a thought for me. Okay, can I do that? So then the thing was, why didn't I discuss it with you? Well, I felt this was a kind of a yes-no answer. So to discuss my thinking and my reasoning and my wrestling with this thing wouldn't really give an answer. So put it this way, had I said, no, sorry, I can't do it, I would have then definitely told you why I felt I couldn't do it. But having worked through it, and having then thought about how is it and how will it work and how can I fit in and what part I can play, I came to the conclusion that I can play a part and I wouldn't be, how can I put it, compromising my own values by being a part of it. Okay. And that for me then was, okay, I've worked through it. I've made the decision and all I had to say to you is, yes, I'll join.
Yeah.
So for me, that was why I didn't particularly discuss it with you at the time.
Good manly principle when you're saying it, like let your yes be yes and your no be no, right?
No be no.
Appreciate that. So one of the things that I just hit me very much is like, the value of silence actually and the value of listening. I just went for a long walk in the countryside here with another guy who lives close by and was talking about his relationship with his dad. And he just, he was just like, if only I had a dad who could listen to me and just like, take in what I'm saying and not always have opinions and trying to be teaching me and trying to force his way. And, when I heard your explanation right now, actually, I was just thinking like, it sounds like you just really took a step back and thought about it and thought about things actually from my perspective as well. And there
Yeah.
was a respect for the work that I've been doing so far, and a patience to allow things to work out or something like that. Uh, does that make sense?
Absolutely. So yeah, the fact that you'd already built an organization, you'd already built a communication with men, and could I be a part of that was more the consideration than how would I do it. So
Mhm.
you were busy doing something, you were busy helping men. It was certainly having effect and having benefit, and we could see that and hear that as we were chatting about things. So
Mhm.
do I? The thing was, do I want to be? Was I willing to be a part of that and helping?
Mhm.
And that came across for me quite solidly. Yes, I can, and I want to.
Okay, good. And what I'm also hearing, Dad, is just a large amount of respect for like, all the stuff that had been happening before, and that there was a whole process coming in and an invitation to participate. Maybe sometimes one of my weaknesses or challenges have been like when I come in, I start pointing out all the things that I think should be better instead of, realizing like, okay, well, I'm new here and maybe I should find my footing first, or something like that.
Very much so. So, yeah, but it's like a company, isn't it? So, a father and a son sometimes have great difficulty in working in the same company.
Mhm.
Often the father starts the company, and now he's got to hand things over to his son.
Mhm.
And men, I think, are notoriously bad at doing that.
Mhm.
So, I'm thinking of Grandpa on mom's side. He was the director of a company, a building company, and he got his own son Peter to come and work with him. And one of Peter's biggest frustrations was, "Dad won't let me do stuff." So here's a reverse. Was your creation, your company, your doing, and you're asking me to be a part of it. So I saw the privilege of that, of you inviting me to be a part of what you're doing. And it was also something I think that was very different in that you weren't dictating the business. You were wanting to build a group of men that could share and communicate and talk together, building a community.
Yeah.
And I suppose one of the things that you maybe decided, I don't know, I didn't even ask, I couldn't be in the same group as you were. And I
Mhm.
think that was a very good decision
Yeah.
because we could
Yeah.
be ourselves in the groups that we were in.
Yeah, I think that's there's quite a bit of like decentralization in the groups, and
Yeah.
I think having a father and son together in one group that definitely creates limitations.
When I was a teenager, one of the things that we had to do, that there was a conscription. It was a compulsory thing. Everybody had to go and do it. And we built such a team of guys together. So, silly little example, but the first time we arrived there, our instructor said, "Go and run whatever it was, 2 kilometers or something." And there we were trying to get the best out and show how good we are and how capable we are of running. And what we realized is there were other guys that didn't have the same capacity. And by the time we'd ended our first 6 weeks of training, we again were given the instruction, go and run the 2 kilometers. And we ran as a pack,
Mhm.
and we ended up all coming in together. And
Mhm.
there was such a camaraderie in that. There was such a fellowship and men helping one another. And it wasn't that we dropped our standard. The guys that were fit were still fit, they were still strong, they were still capable. But
Mhm.
when it came to run together, we just ran as a group and we supported each other. Now, in between, there were a couple of things that happened where we had to work with a couple of guys who weren't part of the team and scrub them up and work together. But at the end of the day, there was this camaraderie. And this to me is something that is being built in Manifesto. It was a friendship, a communion, an ability to stand by each other, support each other,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't say be critical of each other, but maybe that is a word that one can use. Challenge one another, you
Mhm.
know, get there. And
Yeah.
that to me was a tremendous thing that's been built up, this community principle.
Yeah, a little bit of iron sharpens iron, like a little bit of male self-love. It strikes me, Dad, I've almost never heard you talk about your time in the military. So that's interesting to hear you mentioning that. Yeah,
Well, I think
because
that's something that's kind of missing these
yeah,
days. So
yeah.
where do we build that men working together, men achieving something, men getting going? And I feel that Manifesto has really done that for a lot of men.
Yeah, it's a massive lack, right? Like a lot of guys, I know in my life even with a many things that were on my side as far as developing strong, good male relationships. I grew up thinking I had to compete with other guys.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it, I think a lot of it was I went to a boys only school where I was younger. I was the youngest guy in my class. And so there was some bullying that went on. And so I didn't really develop such trusting relationships with other guys a lot of the time. Um,
Mm.
and so that's something that it was only in my 30s where I started realizing, basically every time I had a problem or an insecurity or something I didn't know how to solve, I would normally tell female friends about it, and I made female friends
Mm.
to help support me in my life. And later on, I realized that was one of my biggest weaknesses, actually, is because the female friends gave me sympathy, but sympathy
Yeah.
doesn't help me to grow. Male friends, they challenged me and they fixed me. They helped, they wanted to come with solutions and ways to solve things, right? And so I wasn't able to stay a victim in the same way and blame everybody else and remain to be like that little prince, basically, or something like that, right? So
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
would you said that sounded really interesting actually. You said like there were some guys in your military training that need a little bit of fixing into shape or something like that. Can you talk a little bit more about that? As I never, yeah.
Well, there was just a particular guy that was always slagging, always hanging back, never doing what was expected of him, and so on and so on. So one day we just as a group got together and said to the guy, look, pull yourself together, otherwise we're going to, sort this out. And he didn't pull himself together. And so one day in the showers, he got a scrubbing from all of us. And that just changed everything. From that day onwards, we were doing things together and he pulled his weight. So there was just one little example.
As scrubbing, as you like, you took scrubbing
Us,
brushes and
we
scrubbed them.
took scrubbing brushes and scrubbed them.
Uh-huh. Yeah, okay. Makes me think on we have a lot of exercises on core that we do like hot seats and we have a spring cleaning exercise. Maybe we should do a scrubbing exercise as well sometime to so
We're a little bit difficult with an online one, but never mind. We do
yeah,
a
but you can
scrubbing
get a
as we
verbal
talk to.
scrubbing, right? Like
Yeah, a verbal scrubbing.
I think modern day parlance is a roast or something like that. You do a roast. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. So could one say, we recognize the limitations in any attempt to try and create a structure? I think, postmodernism, if anything, has also shown people, people have kind of given up hope in some kind of clearer structure and path forward. And in the early days of Manifesto, we had a lot of these kind of like more postmodern guys who were like, oh, I don't want to have structure. No, I don't believe in that. I need to be spontaneous. And there's a certain truth to that as well, right?
Yeah,
But then what we've also seen is that men really flourish when they together as a group agree on some kind of structure, and it can be arbitrary at times, right? But if there's
yeah,
something that we're doing together, the important thing is actually we're doing it together and we're being honest with each
yeah,
other about it. And also when we see someone slacking off, that we're actually calling him out and saying, hey, there's a standard here that we agree to, and we're all here to meet the standard, and you're bringing us all down if you're not doing meeting the same standard as well.
yeah. Kind of what I mentioned in our previous talk about me being on the boot camp. I was bringing the team down because I wasn't sharing my load.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that I was not benefiting the team by trying to carry it and do it all myself. And
Yeah.
so that sharing of the load meant that the whole team could relax and we could all get the job done.
Yeah.
So that whole principle, I think, is what comes through. And we communicate, we share, and we're building this community where we stand together and help each other.
Yeah. And that makes me think that as well. Like, it's also about recognizing the natural organic role that you have in a group, what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Because, you don't need to be competing with Nico to be carrying the 35-kilogram backpack up to the top of the hill. You can let him take the backpack. And then that also frees up your energy to focus on what you can do, which might be, spotting, some kind of miss sight or something like that. Being the man with the experience who's been doing all that stuff before, and that's what creates a highly functioning team as well. And that's what, so for a lot of men, they're looking for like, how can I contribute? But a lot of men are actually quite misguided in what their contributive role is in a group, in
Yes.
society, in their life, in their family even. And so that's, I think, one of the core things that we can help each other with.
Yeah. This idea of contributing so that I can be the top dog. No, I'm contributing so that the team can benefit.
Hmm.
And we're not in competition with each other, because your strength can help me and my strength can help you.
Hmm.
And that's something that's been developed with this whole group. And that also, I think, is something important for fathers and sons to recognize.
Yeah.
Father is not as strong as he used to be, and things are getting weaker and so on. But nevertheless, there's a understanding. There's a group dynamic. There's, I can help my dad, and man, my dad can help me, and I need to ask for that help, because that's another thing I found anyway, that as a father, you don't want to just interfere. One of the things I kept saying to mom is, you've got to loosen the apron strings for the boys. They've got to learn to stand on their own feet. So on the one hand, you want to say to the boys, go and bump your head a bit, but then I'm here to catch. I'm here to stand by you. I'm here to support. I'm always here and willing to listen, I think, is one of the most important things. And that's something that seems to be a bit lacking, because again, men want to give answers. They don't want to listen too much.
Yeah. Yeah, what you said really, the first thing you said, that you're like not contributing in order to be the top dog. And that sounds like a
Mm,
really something you've really been able to understand as well in fatherhood as well. Like so it can be very easy to see like fatherhood as a position of authority where you get to decide or tell other people what to do, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, whereas that's not at all the way that you practice it, as far as I'm understanding.
Well, again, in the early days when you're little children, yes. But as you get older, the more and more and more one has to, you know, let the strings go and let men make their own decisions,
Hmm.
even if you think it's wrong.
Even when you think they're making the wrong decision, or yeah, yeah,
Yeah, maybe a warning. Maybe say, look, I think that you're going the wrong direction here, but not to be forceful about it.
yeah. Well, that brings us right full circle to where we started, basically, as well. I guess with
Yeah,
uh, with the pathway that Manifesto has been following, and yeah, I guess it's yeah, it's been very beneficial. So thanks very much for the last couple of years and the little circle that we made here as well. Um, and yeah, excited to see where we're going to continue the conversations after this one.
great. Thanks, Paul. Go well. Cheers.